Hey, welcome back to Ready Room. And me and Sean are just going to sit down and we're going to talk about kind of traits in special operations that translate somewhat to the civilian world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
This is your idea. So,
what kind of brought me to this is I was talking to a friend of ours, Fieldcraft customer, great guy, was in the military, works in a different world now, in the corporate world. He's been there for his whole career. Very successful guy. And, you know, me and you, we look at things like, all that stuff we learn in special operations is very contained, and a lot of the skills we learn, we don't even think about that it can apply other places. So we've been talking a lot, and he's kind of opened my eyes a little bit on a lot of the things that we take for granted in a corporate or business community. Those things are valuable. I mean, the little things like, you know, span of control with leadership, like how many people can you effectively control? Things like that are our nature. Everybody thinks, well, I can be in charge of 50 people. Well, really not. You got to break that down.
Not effectively.
Not effectively. You could try to run 50 people, but really what you can do is maybe you can run 5 managers who run you know, the other 46 people. Or that's bad math. Whatever the math of 5.
Math is hard.
5 and 40 is that 45. I got to take my shoes off for that.
Math is hard. We're both snipers.
Yeah, exactly.
People think snipers can do math.
They can't.
They can't. No.
But, you know, you can only manage. So things like that is what got my mind turning on this. And then, you know, then we came full circle about, you know, training with locals and indigenous forces around the world, which is what special forces specifically, it's really what their job is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So all those things moving forward, I think that would be valuable for a lot of people to hear.
Right. So let's talk about that foreign internal defense mission, basically where you go into, none of this is classified, where you go into a foreign country and you basically build an army from the ground up. And I was very lucky. I got to actually do that very early in Afghanistan, where we recruited militia. And we built units, and they had no uniforms, or they brought their own gun and a couple of mags, and we went and hit targets, and I got to do that, which is it's a really cool mission. But you do learn a lot, and that's why they hammer that cultural awareness to stuff, even more now than even when we went to the Q course. But
well, you have to learn to manage your expectations, because the way we do business here doesn't mean we think it's better, obviously, because it's our stuff. But you go to other parts of the world, and their version of success doesn't look like your version of success. Their version of perfect doesn't look like yours. And you have to be able to adapt to that. That, to me, has always been what made Special Forces, you know, Green Berets, different than, you know, the Navy SEALs or the Delta Force or the Ranger Regiment. All great units, all doing great things. But at the end of the day, we were supposed to be able to work by, with, and through those elements. Like back in Vietnam, you know, an ODA would go in and train a battalion of Montagnard soldiers, and then you'd have 2 E6s that would be the leadership for that one company, and they would take them to combat operations and then recover them and train them.
And the whole
that
point
was the charter. That was the reason they were there.
The whole point is you don't have American boots on the ground, right? You're training them to fight their own war.
Yeah, small footprint kind of.
And you're working yourself out of a job as you train them, and you get them to stand on their own 2 feet. So what's the first FID mission you did?
Peacetime.
Yeah.
I mean,
first
ever FID mission I did was, my first deployment was Kuwait. And that was, when I came into SF, it was a few years after the Gulf War, but Kuwait and Iraq border, we used to go there every 3 months. There was an operation where you would have, I think it was a company at SF and people there that would.
What year were you there?
I went to Kuwait the first time in 1990, I want to say 98.
Oh, I might have been there.
That's crazy. With the first Cav.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that was when Udari wasn't even now it's a base.
Oh, it was a tent.
It was just a training area.
It was tent city. It was a training area. Yeah. We went out in the desert for 4 months.
Yeah. Of course, we were SF. We lived closer to Kuwait City.
Cool.
We didn't live out.
Who are those cool guys with their hands in their pockets, man?
That's us. The big mustaches and looking awesome. But
that's funny. We were in Kuwait at the same time. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
That's weird. Small world. But we would go out there, and we would have to, we had a sign. It was like a battle drill. It was like the old East-West Germany border. You'd go to the same positions, but we had
Kuwaitis with you.
Well, we had a unit that we were attached to.
Right.
Ours was like the 64th, tank brigade or something. I don't know. It was like a tank brigade. But we would go and link up with them and go to their meetings and go to training events with them, try to get them to show up to training. But it used to drive us nuts because, Americans were like, all right, ready to go. Let's go. 8 o'clock, we're at the range. 9 o'clock, we're shooting, blah, blah, blah.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, they'd roll in at noon if they'd roll in. Yeah. Now, again, at the time, I looked at it like, oh, man, these dudes and I'd be all mad about it. But really what you got to look at is that's the culture that they're working in. I mean, you have to, if they show up at noon and they do 2 hours of training and they go home, that's their normal.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we want them to do what we want them to do, but that's not the point.
And we're also coming in for a couple of months and going home. And
Exactly.
they're there all the time.
Yeah, we come in all ripped, all drinking Monster and ready
Yeah.
to go and get our game on, and they're like, "Hey, this is just Tuesday for me, dude."
Yeah.
You know, it's hot.
Yeah.
But-
and yeah, they probably didn't see that much traffic.
I remember what it was funny. Like we used to go like do these. They had a name for it and I've forgotten. But we used to do like a rollout where, all right, Iraq's invading again,
Yeah.
right? Because that was kind of at the time. You got to think it's only 6-7 years after Iraq came into Kuwait and took it over.
Yeah.
I mean, full war. Pillaging, raping, all the whole things, right? So they were still pretty.
There was probably
worried
still some
about it.
damage there. I remember being out in the
there's
desert
tons.
and there was tanks everywhere.
Oh,
that were
yeah.
blown up and
Yeah, there was big tank graveyards out there, and so we would blow out of our base, and we'd go to these battle positions where these tanks were, and they would be all coordinated. Okay, this tank platoon's going to meet you there, and we're going to do this, and we did it. 9 times out of 10, we would do our rollout on the calendar. We get there, and it'd be like crickets. There'd not be an Iraq, there wouldn't be a Kuwaiti tank in sight. Because again, we were running on our schedule.
Yep.
At the time, I talked a lot of trash, but now I look back on it, it's like, I was a young guy. I don't know how much I wasn't involved in the planning. I was just kind of a doer.
Yeah.
And how much of that was us just pushing our schedule on them?
Yeah.
And them just going, okay, yeah, we'll do it. I don't want to fight with you.
Yeah.
Or were we letting them do the planning?
Yeah.
And I looking back on it, I kind of think it was us pushing our schedule.
Yeah, you
on them.
should be letting them do the planning, and you're enabling them. I got so many stories from the Middle East.
Oh, that's
man.
hilarious.
But I was in Afghanistan in 2004, very early on, right?
Yeah.
And we went in, like 6 of us, I think, with like 10 Indij. And we took over Skin. And we took it over from like almost a battalion of infantry, and they were like, "That's all you brought," And we started building an army. But I had like 2 squads, and I was trying to train them, and they had guns, and we go down into the wadi, and it's Ramadan, right? And I got these guys breaking contact, squad attack, freaking like drilling them hard.
Yeah.
And they're like, and I have no Turp, right? I don't speak Arabic. I speak a little bit, right? So they're telling me, hot. And I'm like, hey, ain't my fucking problem if you didn't bring any water, Well, it's freaking Ramadan. They're not allowed to drink water during the day. I knew they couldn't eat. I didn't know they couldn't drink water, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like pushing these guys hard, and I get back, and I'm like, oh shoot, they can't drink water.
Well, and again, that's us trying to force our our timeline and what we need to get done on them without even just taking the input. You can't do that.
Yeah,
when you're working with people.
No, you can't.
You're trying to build capacity. So to build capacity in anything, you have to work with the people that not just, you don't just go in there and start ordering people around. You have to work with them and come up with the best result.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's missing a lot of times on the Army side. But I also think in a lot of businesses, like again, zero business experience. So, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, but I see a trend in leadership in the Army, and I got to believe it trends in a lot of places.
It's human nature.
Human nature. You think that I have a title, I am the boss, I'm in charge. So therefore, that person that works for me, I'm not taking into account the value and experience that they have in taking input. I've said it 100 times. If you're the smartest guy in the room, I think you're in the wrong room. You need to have people in that room that are going to give you their opinions and have solutions. And maybe they work, maybe they don't, but you can't crush that. You can't crush that initiative.
I think weak leaders see that as a challenge to my authority, right?
Yeah.
When people go, you know what, not the best way to do this, I told you this yesterday because we were chatting, and I was like, when I was a team sergeant, I was not an inexperienced leader in the military. I'd been around the block, but when I was a team sergeant, I was doing everything because I felt it was my job. I was ordering ammo and getting ranges, and you know what, that's the 18 Bravo's job. However, I kept doing it all myself until something fell through. A risk assessment wasn't done. We didn't have ammo. We didn't have ranges. And it got jacked up because I was juggling too many things. And Terry came to me and was like, why are you doing my job? That's my job. Get the hell out of my lane.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? You're right.
You're absolutely right.
Well, that's being Terry's a rock star, right?
Yeah.
So Terry ran with it, and we never had a problem again.
Yeah.
But it you shouldn't take that stuff as a challenge. You don't have to follow what they say, but if good people are giving you advice and you want to, and then if you crush that advice, people are just going to stop coming to you.
They'll shut down.
They'll shut down, and they will not help you. And I heard the term before, and it was somebody, I'm not going to give his name, but in the military at high in special operations, and he was like, you know what, we don't have to. He was talking about an officer who's a jackass, and he said, I don't have to. I won't push you in front of the bus, but I don't have to pull you out of the way either. Right?
That's absolutely true.
It is.
And I think, as you know, in any environment, let's just say leadership. I don't care where you're at, leadership, military, civilian, I don't care what you're doing, nonprofit, or it doesn't matter. It's all leadership, right? You are trying to build the capacity for that person that you are in charge of to one day take your job. Because what's your goal in any organization? You want to move up. One day, the job you're in, if best case scenario, you're going to move up to the next position, hopefully, right? Somebody's got to fill your position. You want to be part of something that's bigger and better than when you left it, and you want it to function appropriately. So leaders who don't, aren't a force multiplier, which is what the point of this is you got to teach, mentor, guide the people that are in your organization below you to move up into that position that you're gonna exit at some point. If you stay in that job your whole life, one day you're gonna retire. Somebody's got to fall into that job. And I like to think if you stay at a place your whole life, you care about that location, whether a company, whatever it is. You should care about that organization enough to want to train the next person to be able to do your job in case you leave or go somewhere else or retire, whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah, and I think we and I fail at this as well. I'm good at pointing out my failures, but when I was a team sergeant, I wrote everybody's NCOER because that's my job, right? Now, what I should have been doing, and I thought about it, but I felt like I was shirking my responsibility or being lazy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I talked to another guy one time, and he was like, I make the senior write the NCOER for the junior, and I vet it and I correct it, and I'm writing it really. I'm just having him, because when you become a team sergeant, if you've never done it, all of a sudden now you're writing like 10 NCOERs and you've never ever done it like before.
And you got people's careers in your hands.
Yes, you really do.
That's really the good thing about being like where I came from, the infantry. I had done all that before.
I had too,
So you did too. So rolling in the SF, it was not. But there are a lot of guys who aren't like that.
Yeah, a lot of 18 X-rays come in, they were junior enlisted when they went into SF, and they've never ever done those administrative tasks, and they just get dropped in it. And you're failing your subordinates because you're not writing their rewards properly. You're not writing their NCOERs in the way that gets them, you know what I mean, to the next step. So again, that's you have to train your subordinate leaders to take your job.
I think leaders just have to have a mature outlook on, this isn't a competition. This is making the whole project better. And I need to take the time to mentor that person to do the job correctly. Because if you have somebody that, like you said with Terry, having an 18 Bravo that knew what they were doing, it's really hard to let go of that responsibility because you feel like you own everything, and you do. You take responsibility and blame and success. But your subordinate leaders have to be let off the leash to go do and make mistakes and learn. And I think people forget that a lot of times, especially the higher up the chain it seems like you get a lot of times. A lot of people forget, like the general officer or the senior command sergeant major forgets what it was like to be an E6 on a team and let them make mistakes. And you got to be okay as a leader looking back on that and go, I know this isn't going to be perfect, but it's going to be their version of what right is, and then we can learn from that.
When I was running Force Mod, I was trying to steal all the good people I could from the whole regiment, and I was going behind people's backs, and I was doing shady deals. And CSM Rary was the regiment sergeant major. I love Rary; he was awesome. And he called me up to his office, and he was like, "Hey, what's this about you? You talking to this guy, trying to get this guy?" I said, "Sergeant Major, I'm trying to build my team, and you did the same thing." He said, "You're damn right, I would."
That's your job. That's your job.
Absolutely,
it's your job, and he's doing the same thing. And so I really think there's some, I really took that to heart when I was in SF, especially with the ICTF that me and you have experience with, is these dudes were motivated, patriotic, great Iraqi freedom fighters. I mean, they really were. They were the best of the best, and it was great working with them. You're trying to work yourself out of a job. At some point, you want to be able to step to the back, and they're running everything, and that goes to the same with your staff, your subordinates, your team, whatever you call it in your organization. You as the leader have to take the time to teach people, not just tell them what to do. Because if you just tell somebody what to do, they'll move the boxes from point A to point B, but solid people are going to want to know why. And I don't want people working for me that don't ask me why. I mean, not in a sarcastic way, but I look at that as I'm trying to learn. Like, hey, why are we doing it this way? And if you're a leader that looks at that like, oh, you're challenging my authority, I look at it, you need to look at it as an opportunity to explain to that person, well, here's why. Yeah. Because also, if you've been looking at it for so long, sometimes you see it the same way all the time. And, sometimes I use the analogy, sometimes you don't smell your own farts. If you've been in a room so long farting on yourself, eventually you quit smelling them, right? So if somebody else walks in that room, they're going to be like, good Lord, what just happened in here, right?
You trying to tell me something?
I am. Monster, man. I'll do it to you. But the bottom line is you have to be mature enough and brave enough in your own leadership skills and confident enough in yourself to go, let me explain the why on this to you and tell you exactly why we're doing this. And I think your subordinates are going to trust you.
You get buy-in and you get pride of ownership, right? Yeah. And this is where these conversations breed. Remember we were at sniper school together and we're trying to change the mentality because a lot of people would fail and it was very, very, well, this is hard. It's not for everybody, which is a BS.
We're special.
It's a BS answer, right? So when we started changing the attitude that, look, you're a Green Beret, your job is to train Indige. Yeah. If you're training other Green Berets, Delta Force operators, and Ranger Regiment, you should be able to train them, right? So it just did not become acceptable for people to fail for stupid stuff. So we got them to take pride of ownership and do extra training and work late at night to try to get them to the standard to pass. And you're not lowering the standard, you're raising the level of training.
Yeah. And name another endeavor anywhere where a 50% failure rate in anything is acceptable.
It was
if I make this can in a factory and 50% of them are bad, and I just go, well, the metal's stupid, it won't form right. I mean, there is no other industry where it looks like that. But sometimes people get in training and they get this.
You get entrenched.
They get entrenched and they get this, well, it was way harder when I went through, so I got to make you suffer now. Instead of just saying, look, I'm here to teach you something. I look at it as a personal failure if you don't pass. And I think that's something internally that people have to look at, and they really need to be on guard, because it is easy to slip into that mode. It's really easy to have a bad day and just go, all these guys are stupid. And it's just not the case, though. You have to take ownership of, look inward first, and then decide, okay, how can I now, what do I need to put into this equation to get this person to where I need them to be, or to get this project where I need it to be? And that is truly what creates a force multiplier, because not only are you learning and you're putting the effort in, but that person now that was struggling and on a struggle bus, and you get them off of it and they pass a course, they in their mind, they're like, you basically saved them. And they want to emulate that, and they move forward, and they act like that now when they teach people. And I think that's a whole culture shift when you're in charge of people.
Well, within a couple of classes, as we made these changes, it became normal. It became normal that I had instructors coming to me going, look, I've done everything with this guy. I don't. What am I missing? Help me. Help him. Right?
Help me be a better instructor.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a culture shift, and it didn't take long.
No,
it didn't take long. It just becomes norm. It's the same thing when I was a first sergeant. I made a bunch of changes, and everybody was complaining. And then within a class or two, it was like, this is the way it is. And they were briefing the new guys, this is how we do things. Right? It just becomes normal.
Well, any organization has a core group of influence in it. Like on it, let's just use a team, a Special Forces ODA, for example, 12 dudes on it, right? There's usually 3 to 5 people in that team that really kind of, they're the inertia. It could be the team sergeant, it could be it's rarely the team leader, but it could be the team sergeant, it could be the E7, it could be anybody, but generally there's 4 or 5 guys, 3 to 5 guys that make things, set the tone for that. I've always said,
personality of the
even
team.
In the infantry, I always said, if 3 different platoons in a company, you could tell by the platoon sergeant which platoon was squared away and which wasn't. By looking at them, hearing them talk, listening to them interact, watching them, you could really say, yeah, first platoon's squared away, second platoon's lazy, third platoon's whatever, lost, whatever it is. Your organization will take on that inertia if you let it, good and bad. If you're the guy that comes in and sets a bad example, and you let your people set bad examples, that's going to be your organization. That's what it is. And you have control of that as a leader. It doesn't always mean just going in and yelling at everybody, be better. Maybe you got some things you got to fix.
This is when you got out of the military, you did other government jobs, right? Is this the first really civilian job? Okay,
absolutely. What you don't listen to me at all. I don't know why. I try to boss Kevin around. He won't listen to me.
What are the things?
It's because I'm not in charge of him, but.
Me and you don't need titles, and we don't need to bring it in. So, what are the things that like what are the similarities and differences in the civilian world that you see? To me, it's like timeline, right? We're trying to get things done quickly, and if you're waiting on somebody else's timeline, it's very difficult.
I think vision for me been the hardest thing. Like direction and distance. Like in the military, I always. It was easy to kind of tell what we were trying to get to. Like there was we're coming up on a deployment to Iraq. So we got to do this 6-week train up that we're going to do. So by the end of this week, we want to be here with CQB.
Yeah.
Or by the end of this week, we're going to go here and we're all going to be shooting move or whatever.
Yeah.
Free fall, you name it. In the civilian world, it's very fluid.
Very fluid.
With vision. And from my limited perspective of it, I think it can be the industry that you work in, but I also think there's probably industries like if I worked in a factory, it'd probably be way more symmetrical and way more regimented to where there's here's the output, here's the input, here's what you try to get to. So yeah, that was the biggest thing, is trying to nail down what the one goal vision is for everybody.
Yeah, that's been tough, especially in this company, right? Because this company is very fluid and it's very flexible, and the market gets to decide where you kind of put your focus. And it is very hard to have a 1-year goal, never mind a 5-year goal, because there's so many external factors.
But being adaptive is key.
Yeah,
you have to be adaptive. I think in the military too, but any leadership. I mean, I think if you're adaptive, you're better prepared, and part of that is, good ideas come from a lot of different places. Like anytime I have to make a post, I read it and I'll show it to you or Tula, but what do I do next? I take it to John, who's 27 years old, and I say, does this sound stupid? Because technically he works for us, and I'm going to show him that because he's got a better vision on what sounds good and what doesn't. I don't want to be putting dumb boomer stuff out on Instagram and everybody's like, who's this guy? It makes the company look bad. So I'm going to use the expertise at whatever level that is to make the company better. And I think a lot of leaders, they need to check themselves on that. And maybe you have somebody that's brand new, but they have a different perspective than you have, and you should grab that perspective and utilize it in your own decision-making process. And if you bring a young kid into a decision-making cycle and you use their input and it makes sense, man, you've just created an ally. You've created somebody, like you said, has buy-in, that wants it to get better. And that truly is a force multiplier, because now that person, you've basically giving him a data point or her a data point that they're going to move forward with. And the first time they're in charge of somebody, what are they going to do? They're going to be like, this worked, hopefully. Because I know when I was a young guy in the Army, I looked at what the people above me did because I wanted their job. When I was a private, I wanted to be a fire team leader. When I was a fire team leader, I wanted to be a squad leader. So I would watch what they did. And like we've talked about before, I learned a lot from the things they did wrong because I knew I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do that. But I also learned a lot from what they did right. I did a leadership thing, webinar, and I talked about a guy named Sergeant Roby that just lived it, man. That guy, he knew everything. And he was just a basic armor, mechanized infantry NCO, but he knew everything. And I was like, that is who I'm going to be. You can't ask that guy a question he doesn't know the answer to. But, so I took that little nugget and I said, I'm going to be that guy. And people take that along their career. I think your leadership style comes from taking a bunch from a lot of different things and putting it all together into a package, good or bad.
Good leaders create good leaders. Bad leaders create good leaders too sometimes, right?
Yes, they do.
Managing, I'm trying to put myself in the world of a civilian company, but it's difficult for me, man. I've been in the Army my whole life, and then I've been in fieldcraft. But if you're managing a factory, let's say, with 100 people, young manager comes in, went to management training, which I'm sure is like any other training in an institutional thing where you come in with a degree or whatever. What's the first 5 things you would do? And we haven't rehearsed this, so this might be putting you on the spot. What's the first 5 things you would do coming into a new company, 100 people?
If I was taking over?
If you were taking over from another manager and you were put in there to fix stuff.
First thing I would do is meet with the outgoing guy or girl, talk to them about what's working in their perception, what's not. You know, finding out their perception on what the job is, you know, what's working, what's not, what can be fixed, what could be better. Have that meeting. Then if there was, I imagine 100 people, there's going to be some other supervisors, next tier supervisors. I would have the same meeting with them. And then I would pick all the newest hires. I would have the same meeting with them, and I would take notes, because there's going to be discrepancies, because what I see at this end may not be what you know, the person on the rivet machine is seeing or feeling. And there's going to be valid comments sprinkled through there, and there's going to be invalid comments sprinkled through there. But you got to get all those data points you have to gather.
Yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle.
And then the next thing I would do after I got that is I would sit back and I would watch business happen, and I would be part of whatever processes I could be part of for another couple weeks to kind of see it firsthand. Not say anything, not do anything. Hard as that is,
it is hard. Yeah,
I know. I got a good example of that.
I
know what you're going to bring up. But sit back and observe, because you learn a lot from observing. I mean, you can just have situational awareness and watch somebody who's walking in and out of work, and are they happy? Are they sad? Are they pissed off every day? Is this efficient? Is that efficient? And then
sometimes you'll see things and you'll be like, oh, I'm going to change that. But there's a why that you need to find that why first before you jump into changing.
And that was my number 5. I would ask why. Most of the questions I ask would start with why. Why do we do it this way? And I would caveat that to say, look, I'm not trying to shoot down why we do it. Maybe there's a perfectly valid reason, but I'd like you to explain to me why we do it that way. And because good techniques are going to stand up. Good things are going to pass that why test, and bad ones, if somebody's like, you know what, because it's in that binder that we laminated 15 years ago, and that's the way we've always done it. Okay,
if it's laminated, you can't change it.
Yeah, it's science. I think it's a federal law, but you can read through that though, and maybe it's still valid. I mean, maybe if they have been doing it for 15
or maybe it doesn't need to be shit canned. Maybe it just needs to be tweaked.
Yeah,
you know.
So I mean, but you have to, as a leader, you have to look at all that. And you have to make those hard decisions, and so those, I think, were really a lot of observation, a lot of communicating with people that are there, and not just, don't come in with immediate perceptions of, hey, I walked in and the garbage can is full, so this place is horrible. Yeah. That can be one data point, but you got to take a lot of things into account.
You do. You know, and if you change things without asking the why, you lose people. Yeah. You know what I mean? They tap out. Yeah. Because you didn't bother to figure out why this is happening. Yeah. And
well, and any changes you owe. I hate when leaders think they don't owe their employees the why. I don't care if you work at wherever you work and the person got hired yesterday. Yeah. If you owe them that explanation, they're probably not going to ask you why. Why are we doing this now? You need to be able to say, look, hey, we're changing process A, and here's why. Now, there's going to be people that disagree with you. There's people that aren't going to like it. There's people that are going to argue against it. Hopefully, you've gathered all the info and made an informed decision before you made the change. And if you did that, you can explain the why. And then step 2 to that is, let's just say the thing you changed doesn't work out. Yeah. You also have to be brave enough to stand up and go, look, everybody, hey, we made this change. Here's the why we did it. It didn't work because of this, and here's how I want to adjust it. Even if it's going all the way back to square one and saying we're going back to the way we used to do it, my bad. Yeah. Made a bad call. You're going to get more respect and more buy-in from people when you admit that you make a mistake, because everybody makes them. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and as a leader, you got to be vulnerable enough and confident enough in yourself to talk to your people and let them understand that you're in it with them. You know, I see that a lot in the Army, where it's like, okay, now I'm a pretty big deal, and I don't have to explain why to you, because
and we're doing this because that's the way it's always been done.
That's the way it's always been done. Yeah, because we've had multiple examples of at the sniper course, all the changes we made. It was like we were going to ruin markmarksmanship. Yeah, rifles were never going to shoot straight again if we didn't shoot iron sights on sniper rifles. Yeah, everything was down the drain. And now nobody. Data books. Oh my God! Get rid of data books. My God! I know. Worlds colliding. So you have to be brave enough to make those decisions, but you also have to be smart enough to ensure that you do the research and you talk to people that know. Like, even some of my biggest disagreements came from the civilians that had been at the sniper course for a long time. One of our instructors, Rick, wrote the manual, literally wrote the manual on Special Forces sniping, and I was taking things out of training that he had in place 25 years ago. He has buy-in. Yeah. he never agreed with me on a lot of it, and I understood that and I respected it, but we gained a mutual respect by me pulling him aside and talking to him and saying, look, Rick, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I just came from combat. This is what's going on now. We have to change.
Yeah.
I don't agree. They don't agree, whatever. But at the end of the day, I have nothing but respect for guys like that because they're fighting their battle. But as soon as we made the call, he was like, Roger that. I got your back. I support you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the guy you want. You don't want the guy.
Yeah.
The opposite is worse. The guy who just doesn't give a shit. I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Or the guy that hopes you fail. It's like, oh, yeah, whatever. We'll see. Oh, I'm going to talk trash behind your back and wait for you to fail, and then I'm going to laugh at you. It's like everything good comes with failure. I mean, any small business that's ever opened has probably failed 100 times. I mean, any famous rock band was told no a bunch of times. Failure breeds that success, and you have to be able to move down that path as a leader too. That you're gonna fail. You're gonna make. Corporal Kirkwood was a horrible leader. I think at retirement, I was a way better leader than I ever was because over the years I learned those lessons. And as leaders, you have to do that.
I like it.
Yep.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. I like it. It's we'll do more like this.
Yeah.
I think they're good discussions, and we don't have a plan. We just start. We just start talking. But
bottom line, the end result for me is just if you're in an organization and you're in any leadership position, I don't care what it is. If it's a project leader with no people, if it's people, be a force multiplier in your own world. Train the people that work with you and for you to do what you need them to do, to understand the process, to understand the why, to make good decisions in the absence of leadership. That's really the key. And the only way to do that is to empower them to make decisions and let them understand, hey, if you make a bad one, I'm not going to lop your head off. We're going to learn from it. We're going to do an after-action review. If you keep making the same mistake, then it's a problem. But if you make it, correct it, and you go on to something else, you're a better person for it. Your organization's better, and you're better as a leader.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Love it. All right. Until next time. Thanks. Bye.